would Near going to the price of $30 during this point surprise me? No, it wouldn't, even though that's not financial advice. And the reason why is because I think that the Near protocol is absolutely amazing. Let me talk about why I think so. Because let's take a look at the Near protocol. It's a proof of stake blockchain that utilizes something called sharding technology. Now, the amazing thing about this is the fact that through sharding, the network is split into multiple sections known as shards. And as a result of that, workload on the network, they are distributed amongst these different shards. And as a result, something like the Near protocol becomes very scalable and just very awesome overall. Now, granted, though, the Near protocol isn't the only one to use sharding technology. Like, for instance, we see some others, like in the case of Zilliqa, which I think is probably the most famous other comparable example to this. But again, sometimes people like to complain and say, oh man, if it's not the only one using it, that means it's bad. Well, I disagree with that. I mean, many projects out there, they're using blockchain technology. Does it mean that blockchain technology is bad? I don't think so. So I think if anything, if let's say there's like even more than one project using sharding technology, I think it's actually a good sign in the grand scheme of things. And also some people like to say, oh man, the Near protocol is so bad and all this type of stuff. Well, granted, the ecosystem isn't the biggest. Like, I'm not saying this is as massive as like Solana or Ethereum. I'm not saying that, right? But then I think it's pretty decent. And not to mention, there is a focus on AI when it comes to Near. You know, some people don't really think about that when it comes to Near, but then it actually kind of is, in my opinion. Now, why is this amazing? It's because when I take a look at the AI market, it is predicted to reach nearly $2 trillion by 2030, according to Grandview Research. That's very massive right there because, for instance, right, if we take a look at the GDP of Brazil, you know, back in 2024, that was around $2 trillion. So when people like to say, oh, the AI market can't be that massive, well, at least predicted to by Grandview Research, it could hypothetically be that amazing. And I use that GDP example to kind of like showcase as to just how massive that prediction is, even though it may never happen. But at least it kind of, I think, gives me a gauge as to how massive really this market could be, again, AI. However, even besides that point, sometimes people like to complain and say that, oh, you know, because Near doesn't have the best adoption out there because the ecosystem isn't the best, it's not going to gain a lot of traction during a fully fledged type of altcoin season. Well, I'm going to hypothetically disagree with that because in the world of cryptocurrencies, as of right now, the way to take a look at it is that people more so care about the anticipation, what the project is focused on, more so about what the project is kind of like having the vibe of, if that makes sense. Because if many people only believed in projects that had good adoption, I think many AI projects, many NFT, you know, blockchain gaming, DeFi projects, I think many of them that we see that are very massive, I would assume that if it was only based on pure adoption, many of them wouldn't really be that massive. But then again, in this space that we're in as of right now, people more so care about, you know, the hype and anticipation. Not to mention, right, we see many like, you know, metaverse projects out there, blockchain gaming projects. They see they're going to launch this, launch that, but then they never do anything, but then still their market caps are very massive. So then again, I'm not saying what could this space be 10, 15 years later where people maybe care more so about adoption. Again, in the current environment that we're in as of right now, I think people more so, again, care about what something could be as opposed to what it already is, if that makes sense. So I don't think it's going to be like a limiting factor when it comes to Near. However, of course, only time will tell because I can't tell the future. However, even besides that, why isn't Near going to the price of $30? I think it's something too ridiculous because if it were to go to that price, considering current circulating supply, market cap would be around $37 billion. Now, it's around an 11x from here. Let's say for simplicity's sake, it's give or take a 10x, right? Now, some people may be thinking, oh, that's kind of bad, really. But then we have to consider how Near isn't a small project by any means. It's pretty massive in the grand scheme of things. Sometimes I want to look for something that is more stable, something that I feel like is more reliable in terms of the community, in terms of the good exchange listings, also in terms of like just the established nature of the project, because Near, it's been through a lot, right? It has a proven track record. Other projects out there don't really have that. And that's not a determining factor whether or not something will do well in the future. And don't get me wrong, I believe in some of those projects too, but sometimes I also want to use something like Near as one of my foundational pieces in my portfolio, even though I'm not telling anyone to buy Near, but this is just the way to take a look at it. Now again, people may be thinking, okay, around a 10x is kind of bad, but then if we take a look at Bitcoin, right, which has done very well, unlike altcoins, you know, which haven't really done that well actually, but then I hypothetically think there is going to be eventually an altcoin season. which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. But even besides that, again, despite Bitcoin doing very well, many people are saying, oh, maybe it could hypothetically go to the price of $300,000 as like, a best case scenario, maybe. But then that's like less than a 3x from here, slightly, right? And we got to think about this. What would have an easier time, let's say in the next 6 to 10 months, let's say doing a 3x? Is it near or is it Bitcoin? I think arguably I would say it's near in my perspective, because since it's an altcoin, since the market cap is way lower, it doesn't need that much volume to really move it that much, if that makes sense. Now, granted, when it comes to near, I feel like it is more risky than Bitcoin, even though near isn't a microcap. But then the way I view it is that, in my perspective, I'm willing to take a chance on this, whether I am wrong or right, whatever the case may be. I'm still going to believe in this. So again, that's the way to take a look at it. And again, at around a $37 billion market cap, which again, it would have if it were to go to the price of $30, considering current circulating supply. We've seen, for instance, right, something like Dogecoin reach over $80 billion in market cap back in 2021. We saw Shiba Inu reach around $40 billion that year. And given those amazing achievements, I would say, years ago, right, we're talking about, even despite that, many people are saying, oh, this time around, Shiba Inu is going to go to like 80 billion, or Dogecoin is going to reach like 160 or whatever. I've heard some people say this. It may never happen, but if, let's say, Dogecoin does even better than what it did back in 2021, which many people are predicting because they think it might go to the price of $1 or maybe even more, are we saying like around $37 billion in market cap is too much to ask for, or something like near? I don't know about that. Like, I don't think that's too unrealistic. You know what I mean? But it really is just a waiting game, because even despite us, or should I say even despite the crypto space overall, having over 600 million crypto owners currently, according to Crypto.com research, which is more than ever before in history, even despite that, which is way more bullish than 2021, by the way, because during the peak of that boom that year, there was around 300 million crypto owners. But even besides that, even despite that, we haven't really seen a fully fledged type of altcoin season. But again, with this many new crypto owners, if we do see a fully fledged type of altcoin season, I think just due to the sheer numbers, it could maybe hypothetically look a lot better than what it did years ago back in 2021. But this is all speculation. Now, how soon? We can't tell the future exactly, in my opinion. Like, I can at least, right? Like, I don't know what's going to happen in the future when it comes to near. I can only speculate, but at least I can take a look back in history. And historically speaking, altcoins usually, as a worst case scenario, they typically peak around 18 months after a Bitcoin halving event, so basically a year and a half. So if we add 18 months from the last Bitcoin halving event, which happened in April of last year, so 2024, again, we add 18 months on top of that, that's around October this year. I mean, altcoins could maybe peak at that moment or maybe not. We just don't know, right? But then the way you take a look at it is that whether it happens at that time, November, December, January, February, March, whatever. And of course, when it comes to January, February, March, I'm talking about next year, but I'm just saying, whatever the timeline is, I'm just going to stay consistent and just be in the projects that I do believe in, dollar, cost average, hold, and I just wait. Really, that's it. I mean, I can't demand things to go up. I can't control the market, so I can only control myself. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to stay patient and again, just wait, because even though we kind of have that benchmark, we don't know if things are going to be kind of the same this time around. Not to mention, we also, I don't think could rely off that, because history isn't always necessarily going to repeat itself to an exact T. But with all the bullish factors that I see as of right now, even despite whenever the timeline is, let's say we do see a fully fledged type of altcoin season. Again, whenever that does happen, maybe if it does, I'm still going to stay patient. I'm waiting anyways. So I'm just going to stay patient again. And when it comes to $30, that wouldn't surprise me whatsoever when it comes to near. And make sure to subscribe if you gain value from this video. I greatly appreciate it. It's been Lee the Captain, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. I'm a peace. Bye.